What's going on? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I've got another one of those crazy what if type of shows today. So a lot of it is based off of theory, speculation, tomfoolery, chicanery, call it whatever you like. It's just me in my wandering mind. So bear with me today. You're going to have a bit of imagination, if you will. But it's draft season, aka Lion season. All bets are off. Anything can happen, right? We'll talk about those things. We'll talk about some things that are a little bit more tangible. Okay, things that you can actually touch, feel, see, all that good stuff. And anything else under the sun that you want to get to today on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 329th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I've got my growl towel. I've got my Grizzlies hat on. I'm ready for war. Game 2 of the Memphis Grizzlies, Los Angeles Lakers first round series tonight, 7:30. Looking forward to seeing the fellas take the court. I'm going to lay this out for you real quick. I've figured out what's going to happen tonight already. I know my team better than anybody else that's a non-Grizzlies fan. If you've been watching this team over the last 2 years, this year in particular, then you know this team is extremely resilient. When faced with adversity, they usually put their best foot forward. We're faced with adversity tonight, losing the first game, just like we did last year in both series that we played in. So this is not uncharted territory for us. I've already laid that out for you guys last podcast, and for those of you who chopped it up with me on IG Live, we have been here before. So this is not new for us. But what is new is that you're going into this game with a ton of injuries. We didn't have that last postseason. We didn't have to deal with Ja Morant that was compromised. We didn't have to deal with no Brandon Clark, no Steven Adams. We didn't have to deal with that last year. However, we dealt with it this year, and we've overcome this season with all of the things that have befallen this Grizzlies team, whether it was starting the season without Tripp, Jaren Jackson Jr., one of our all-star players, not in the lineup for the first 11 games, not having Desmond Bane for 17 games due to a big toe injury, not having Ja Morant for stretches of the season, including a suspension where he missed about 3 weeks of basketball, almost a month. No Steven Adams since January 21st. You're talking about him missing essentially the last 2.5 months of the season. Brandon Clark tears his Achilles. Look, we've been doing this all year long, and we've answered the bell every single time. And so here's what's going to happen tonight. If Ja Morant does not play, I guarantee you a Memphis Grizzlies victory. Book it. Stamp it. He doesn't play, we win. If Ja Morant tries to give it a go and can't finish, we lose. If Ja Morant, who is a game time decision right now, gives it a go and is able to play, all bets are off. I can't tell you what's going to happen. If he plays the entire game, can't tell you what's going to happen. I can only assure you victory if he doesn't play, because then every other player on the team will know their role going into the game. There will be no surprises. It's hard to adjust on the fly. I can attest to this going all the way back to my midget basketball days. We had a juggernaut of a team. We were in the championship game, and our star point guard played AAU. And this is when I first learned about AAU. This is back in the day when I don't think AAU wasn't as big as it is now. It was just starting to become the powerhouse that it's become, that we come to know and not love, because I definitely don't love the AAU circuit. But she didn't play in our championship game because she had an AAU tournament she had to go to. And so we weren't sure if she was going to play or not. We knew she had an AAU tournament. She kept giving us hope that she might play. She wasn't sure. She may be back in time. She may not be back in time. If they won, no, she wouldn't be back. But if they lost, she probably would make it back in time. So we didn't know. We were kind of just hanging on. Had we just known, had we just gone into that game knowing she wasn't going to play, I think we would have all had our minds wrapped around what we needed to do, our individual roles. Hey, I'm going to need a little bit more from you today. You can mentally prepare yourself for that, right? All right. There's no blow at the end of the first quarter. Okay. You're going to have to take some of the ball handling responsibility. She's not here. Okay. If they come with a full court trap, right? They come with a full court press and a trap. You're going to have to come to the basketball. You can't be hiding in the corner, okay, where you usually go. All right. You have to be more involved. These are things you can prepare yourself for mentally. We did not prepare ourselves mentally for that because we thought she still might be there. Then when she wasn't, it was like we were all scattering, trying to figure out, all right, how do we adjust? Obviously, these are pros and they can figure it out. But one thing about NBA players is they want to know and have a defined role. It's tough when you're on the bench and you're not sure if you're going to play 5 minutes tonight or if you're going to play 17 minutes tonight or if I'm going to need 28 minutes from you tonight. All right. It's tough when you show up to the court, you show up to the gym, and you're not sure if you're even going to take your warm-up off tonight. If Ja Morant isn't playing, you can prepare a couple of dudes who didn't see the floor in game one. You can prepare them to see the floor tonight. You're getting some action. Be ready. If he does play and then he gets injured in the game or he can't go, and those guys who mentally didn't prepare themselves and they still got their warm-ups on, and coach says, hey, I'm going to need 7 to 10 minutes from you tonight. That changes things. Right? You already come to the gym knowing I got to give 7 to 10 minutes tonight. You're ready. You show up to the gym thinking, Josh's fine, he'll play. And then he doesn't, or he gets injured. And now you got to go in the game eventually. It's different. So, short story. Take this long story and make it a short one. If Ja plays, I don't know what's going to happen. And finishes the game. Starts and finishes the game. I don't know what's going to happen. It could go either way. Because a compromised Ja, a Ja that's not himself, I don't know if that helps the team at all. I've already said this. If I'm Taylor Jenkins, the coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm not playing him tonight. I'd much rather take my chances, and I get it. Not playing him could mean you're down 0-2 going back to LA and the series is done. That's the way most people would perceive it. I totally understand. This isn't Golden State down 0-2. They're going home. We'll be going on the road. It's totally different. I understand that. But I'd much rather have everybody know, hey, no Ja tonight. He'll be back next game. All right. But for this game, I need everything you got. I need it all. Home crowd will give us a little bit of a boost. Everybody pick up their level of intensity. Let's go out here and do what we do, play Memphis Grizzlies basketball and get a dub. Even this thing up at 1, and let's go to LA, steal 1, and get this thing back to Memphis tied up at a bare minimum, tied at 2. We'll take it from there. So if he does play, doesn't finish the game, we lose. If he doesn't play, I guarantee you a victory tonight. The way I see it with the NBA playoffs, it's going to be balanced on both sides of the bracket. You're going to have 2 2-0 series, 2 1-1 series on both sides of the bracket. So in the East, you've already got Boston 2-0, Philly 2-0, right? All of the teams yesterday that were on the road that were at home that needed to make a statement, made a statement and won the game and sent the series back 1-1 that were supposed to do it. Cavs did it last night emphatically. So did the Phoenix Suns. I surmise my Grizzlies may not be emphatically, but I surmise that my Grizzlies will do the same. They'll fall in line with the likes of the Bucks, who I expect to win tonight, to even up that series and send it back to Miami 1-1. I expect the Grizzlies to do the same. even that series up at 1-1, go back to LA and let's play some ball. And I expect the Nuggets to go up 2-0 on the Timberwolves and make that series 2-0. And that'll be your second 2-0 series along with the Kings over the Warriors in the Western Conference. So the East will have 2 1-1 series, right? Bucks and Heat 1-1, Cavs and Knicks 1-1. Got the 2-2-0 series with the Hawks down 0-2 to the Celtics and the Nets down 0-2 to the 76ers. West side of the bracket, when it's all said and done, dust settles, smoke clears after tonight. Nuggets will be up 2-0. Kings will be up 2-0. Warrior or Grizzlies and Lakers 1 apiece. Same can be said for the Suns and Clips. So that's the way I see it. I might be delusional. I don't think I am because I know my team. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Real quick, I wanted to talk just a smidge of baseball, just a little bit of baseball real quick, because the Tampa Bay Rays got off to a ridiculous 13-0 start to the season. I've never seen anything like it. And clearly, I don't think anybody else has that's, walking this earth, because I think the last team to do it was like in the 1940s. Not to say that somebody's not alive from the 1940s, obviously, but none of us in this little circle here were born in the 1940s, at least. It doesn't happen very often that you start the season off without a single loss for that long. I think they're the third team in Major League history to start the season off 13-0. They tied the 2 previous teams to start off with that mark. They then lost 3 out of their next 4. And, I meant to, give my guy JP a hard time. He's a Red Sox fan. They got swept up in that 13-0 start. They had a chance to knock them off at least once, and they couldn't do it. Blue Jays, thank God for the Blue Jays, who not only beat them once, beat them twice in a 3-game set to cool them off a bit. But that's a good baseball team, man. I think they're the best that the AL has to offer right now. Obviously, it's early, man. And so I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but damn, they're good. And they did just have a guy, one of their pitchers be put on the DL. He's done for the year. He's going to have TJ surgery. Same could be said for my Braves. We had one of our pitchers, Ian Anderson, done for the year. He's going to have TJ surgery as well. But my Braves have won 8 in a row. We're the second best team in baseball right now, only behind those aforementioned Tampa Bay Rays. We are 14-4 on the season now after 8 straight, and looking for our 3rd consecutive sweep in a row. And it would be our 4th sweep of the season. So we're playing exceptional baseball. We knew that we had a monster lineup. I wasn't quite sure about the pitching, but our bullpen has been putting in Ullman-like work. Our starters are doing just enough, and the bats are smacking the ball around the park. So I like where the Braves are. I feel like I told you that for me as a fan right now, this is probably the best position I've been in a long time. I can't say ever, because again, I've already laid this out for anybody that was on IG with me the other night. I said right around 1991, 92, in that window right there, it was like heaven for me as a kid growing up. Notre Dame was a perennial powerhouse with Lou Holtz in that time frame. Duke basketball was just turning into Duke basketball, where they were like one of the best programs in the nation consistently year in, year out. That was the group that really kickstarted everything with Leitner and Hurley and Hill and Davis and company. So they were a powerhouse, and they were about to win back-to-back championships. The Bulls were in the midst of winning 3 in a row. That had just gotten started, and the Redskins had just won what I didn't know at the time would be their final Super Bowl under the Joe Gibbs regime. And so, what a time to be alive as a fan. And my Braves were just starting out. They won their first NL East divisional crown, the first of 15 in a row. Let's see, 2005 was our last one. We won 91 to 2005. We won the NL East every single year. So, yeah, what a time to be alive for me. Feel like I'm getting close to that again. Not in the collegiate sports, department though. Duke isn't there yet, and neither is Notre Dame football. And don't know if Notre Dame football will ever get back to that point. But from a professional standpoint, I think Washington has a chance to be really good this year. We'll see. And really good is a relative term. They have a chance to be relevant this year. Let me say that. They have a chance to be relevant this year. My Grizzlies are going to be around for the next 5 to 7 years, and so are my Braves. So, yes, feels good to be a fan right now. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to my gem dropping session today, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, I'm going to need y'all to put on y'all thinking caps here for this gem dropping session, because this is going to require a bit of imagination, okay? This is some of these theories, some of these what ifs are a little far-fetched to some, but I was thinking, and I get dangerous sometimes when I start thinking. When I put the thinking cap on, my brain goes off to these crazy faraway lands, and sometimes the information that I come back with doesn't make a lot of sense, but this is why I'm me, okay? So I was sitting down and I was taking my mock draft, because I'm going to have my mock draft ready for mass consumption on Saturday. I'll be releasing my 2023 NFL mock draft parts 1 and 2 on Saturday afternoon. And thus, I'm going through the mock draft and I'm slotting players here and there, and I'm going through the process that I go through every year with this thing. And I started thinking about the conversation we had about the Texans on Monday, how the Texans are fielding offers for the number 2 overall pick, that they're not necessarily in love with any quarterback in this draft not named Bryce Young, and hence they could not take a quarterback at number 2. And if they're not going to take a quarterback at 2, somebody else would most certainly love to come up and take CJ Stroud off their hands if they're not sold. So it got me to thinking. The Texans hold the key to the entire first round breaking out into absolute madness. Total, utter chaos will ensue if the Texans decide, we're good on quarterback. We don't need one at number 2. Now, everybody's shuffling their papers. They're scrambling to put together a package that will satisfy the Texans to try to get up to number 2 to get CJ Stroud. And then I started thinking, what if the Indianapolis Colts said, we'd love to get our hands on a quarterback, but not necessarily looking for anybody other than Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. And maybe the Colts would be willing to look past the fact that, hey, we got to play this team twice a year, every year in our same division. And the guy that we pretty much said wasn't good enough for us is going to be able to circle our name on his calendar twice a year and look forward to kicking our ass every year, twice a year. probably not something you'd like to do. But if you don't believe in CJ Stroud, then you say, hey, Indy, you can have him. We think he sucks ass. Here you go. You take him. However, what if Houston just says, you know what? None of the offers that teams are lobbying at us makes a ton of sense. Really don't love what you guys are putting out there. And if you really want us to come out of 2, you got to knock our socks off. We got another first round pick already. Okay. It's not like you're enticing us with something like, hey, you can have 2 first round picks. We already got 2 first round picks. I don't have to move out of 2. I can just take the best player available that's not a quarterback on our board. Can take us a pass rusher right here. We need one. I could take Tyree Wilson. I could take Will Anderson and be done with it. What if they decide to do that? What if the offers aren't good enough? I doubt that, sincerely. If they decide they want out, somebody's going to be desperate enough to come up. But what if? Because Indy needs a quarterback. Houston needs a quarterback. Tennessee needs a quarterback. There's a rumor going around right now that the Tennessee Titans are inquiring about the number 3 overall pick in the draft. Makes a ton of sense. You got a brand new GM. He clearly doesn't believe in Ryan Tannehill, nor should he. You want to put your stamp on the franchise? The best way to do that is to go get you a quarterback. So it makes a ton of sense. They've been doing their rounds this entire draft process. They've been at all the major pro days with these quarterbacks. They've had conversations with them. They've made it no secret. They're not hiding the fact that they're actively pursuing a QB in this draft. They just don't know which one. So what if the Titans are able to come up to number 3? I've already said somebody's coming up to 3. But in this scenario where the Texans decide, nah, I'm good on CJ Stroud. What if CJ Stroud falls to 3? Now, all of a sudden, the hottest pick in the draft belongs to the Arizona Cardinals. They're definitely getting out of 3 at that point. But what if Indy says, stop the presses? I wanted to come up to number 2. Houston didn't want me to come up to 2. They wanted DeForest Buckner in a trade. I was like, nah, I'm good. But I'll do a deal with you. You move back 1 spot. I'll bless you with a couple things here and there. You call it even. Because at this point, the Arizona Cardinals shouldn't be looking for any of your pieces. They should just want draft capital. That's it. You're rebuilding. You don't have a chance at hell at winning anything of note in the next 2 to 3 years. You should just be looking for tangible assets, not players. Just draft capital. That is it. The Colts can give you that. They have extra pieces. They got an extra 3rd round pick that they got from Washington. They got some stuff. They should be able to give you whatever you need, even if that includes a 2 next year. So what if the Colts say, hey, we'll come up to number 3 and so we can draft CJ Stroud? Bam, they got their quarterback, right? Because if they don't do it at 3, somebody else is going to do it. But what if the Texans find a willing partner, right? What if the Texans find a willing partner to trade out of 2 and they decide, we good on CJ Stroud, and somebody like the Raiders decides to come up to number 2 and they move back to 7 and the Raiders come up? Or the Falcons, who they've been doing their due diligence on these quarterbacks in this draft class because they know, just out of curiosity, just maybe anything can happen, right? It's Lions season. I don't expect all this shit to happen, but you just never know. They've been doing their homework quietly. And let's say the Texans get out of there. It doesn't matter who comes up. They're coming up for CJ Stroud. Let's just make it a point to know that they're coming up for CJ Stroud. He's no longer on the board. Now, most teams around the league are very aware that the Colts are probably going to take a quarterback at 4. So if you're Indy, you could sit there at 4 because I've already made the case that if you're Indianapolis and you feel comfortable with the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft class, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Bryce Young, if you're comfortable with all 4 of them, you know you'll never get a shot. You had a chance and you didn't pull the trigger to get up to number 1. You had a shot at Bryce Young and or CJ Stroud. But you decided you were good. Price was maybe a little too steep for you. You said, I'm comfortable with all 4 of the guys. I don't really need to trade up. Whatever you told yourself that makes you sleep better at night, so be it. So then they don't have to do anything if they feel comfortable, but they can't feel the same about all 4 quarterbacks. They may like the other 2. They can't love them like they love Bryce Young and or CJ Stroud. Who am I to say that, right? Everybody's evaluation of these quarterbacks are different. What if, however, the Ravens, I said this a long time ago when this Lamar Jackson thing really started to bubble. What if the Ravens view Anthony Richardson as the heir apparent to the Ravens Lamar Jackson throne? And what if we already know the Indianapolis Colts are interested in Lamar Jackson? They're the only team that didn't publicly shoo away the idea of acquiring Lamar Jackson. They're the only team. Everybody else has said, nah, we good on Lamar. They said, fully guaranteed contract, that's a lot. That's what their owner said. But that admits that they had the conversation, and he didn't say we wouldn't do it. He just says, I don't like the idea of doing it. They're not going to do it, just so you know. But their head coach, Shane Steichen, has also come out and said, we're evaluating every option, including Lamar Jackson. He could have easily have said, nah, we're good. You know, we're focused on the draft, not really worried about anybody else. He tried to kind of walk that line with the comment that he made, something similar about we're worried about the guys in our building, but he didn't dismiss the idea of a guy like Lamar Jackson. So what if Anthony Richardson is sitting there at 4? My guess is if someone's trading up in front of the Indianapolis Colts, you're coming to get Anthony Richardson. That's my guess. But for this exercise, because in my mind, I said, what if the Colts trade up to 3 with the Arizona Cardinals to ensure that Anthony Richardson is now on the board and in their possession if they so choose? But then they go back and they call Baltimore up and they say, hey, Baltimore, still think I could get that deal with Lamar Jackson? And the Ravens are like, yeah. We swap QBs. I'll sweeten the pot a little bit because I'm coming all the way up from, where are the Ravens at on this thing? 22. I'm coming all the way up from 22 to 3 or 4. So I'm going to sweeten this pot for you a little bit. But yeah, you got yourself a deal. What if that happens? I wouldn't rule it out. I'm not saying, I'm just saying anything could happen with that Lamar. I told you if something happens with Lamar, it's going to be draft night. If anything happens with Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be draft night. We are not done with quarterback movement yet. Anything happens with Trey Lance happening on draft night. And I would not discount the Tennessee Titans in that discussion either. Now, I still think the Titans, who are in play for number 3 overall, coming up from 11, if they were to do that, I still think they're in play for a quarterback at 11 if they sit there. And I also think that they're in play for a quarterback via the trade route. Remember, their GM, Rand Carthen, came from San Francisco. It reminds me a lot of the Jared Goff situation when Brad Holmes left the Rams, became the new GM, general manager of the Detroit Lions, reached back and grabbed Jared Goff and said, "Hey, I know y'all not using this no more. I'll take it off your hands. Appreciate y'all." He blew the dust off of it, wiped it down, shined him up, and now he's playing good ball for the Detroit Lions. What if Rand Carthen says, "I was a part of the brain trust. I was a part of the decision-making process, just like Brad Holmes was in LA when they decided to go all the way up to number 1 and trade up to get Jared Goff. Could have took Carson Wentz. Those were the 2 names in that draft. They went and got Goff, and the Rams were done with him. Sean McVay was done with him, and Brad Holmes says he's got more football left in him. I'll take him from here." What if Rand Carthen says, "I was a part of the process that steered Kyle Shanahan away from Mac Jones"? Remember, there was a real conversation a couple of years ago about Mac Jones versus Trey Lance and what the 49ers are going to do. And I said, Trey Lance is the perfect fit for Shanahan's offense. And I think Shanahan, if he had it his way, he would have taken Mac Jones. If you look at the quarterbacks he's had success with throughout his career, they look like Mac Jones. They move like Mac Jones. They throw the football like Mac Jones. Matt Schaub, Matt Ryan. These are the quarterbacks that he had a ton of success with in his career as a play caller. Mac Jones looks like those guys. Would have made a ton of sense. Kirk Cousins is another guy that had tremendous success with Kyle Shanahan, who he tried to trade for from Washington, and they were too stupid to allow the 49ers to take Kirk Cousins off their hands for a first-round pick when they knew Kirk wasn't going to sign a long-term deal and you were only going to get a third-round pick in return as a compensatory pick once he left. He wanted Kirk Cousins in San Francisco before he got Jimmy Garoppolo. That's his type of quarterback. So now that they have a guy in San Francisco, in Brock Purdy, that kind of resembles those other guys, a little bit more mobile, but kind of resembles those other guys, and Trey Lance is yet to stay healthy and yet to prove himself, 49ers feel like there's a window here of opportunity to win a chip. They're not going to waste it on a guy still trying to develop. Now they want to recoup something for that former first-round pick they traded all the way up to number 3 to get. Enter in Rand Carthen, who says, "Hey, that was my guy just 2 years ago. Just 3 years ago in the draft, but 2 years ago, I was beating the table for Trey Lance. You're not going to use him. I'll reach back, grab him, blow the dust off of him, shine him up, stick him in Tennessee, add some weapons around him, and let's see if this young kid can play or not. I believe in him." What if the Texans decide that that's the answer to their quarterback problems? Remember, their head coach came from San Francisco. He knows Trey Lance. He's seen the young man. He knows his work ethic. He knows what he's capable of. What if DeMeco Ryans says, "Hey, we don't love," it's a consensus in this room, right? We don't love CJ Stroud. We don't love Will Levis. We don't love Anthony Richardson, right? I got a dude that I love in San Francisco right now. Let's go get him. What if the Texans say that? And they're cool with not drafting anybody at 2, and they decide, "Nah, we good. We cool on all of that. We'll just stay here at 2. We got 2 first-round picks, so we don't need to go anywhere." It's not going to take a first-round pick to get Trey Lance. I don't even think it'd take a second-round pick. I think right now the 49ers are in a position where the best they can do is a 3rd round pick. Maybe you can squeeze a 2nd. The man's done nothing in the league right now. So you're not getting your 1st round pick back. I can assure you of that. Probably could get a 2nd out of somebody. I think the 3rd is the sweet spot. You missed, not me, not my problem. Let me help you though. You got a dilemma on your hands. Let me help you out. Anyway, that's very interesting. The Titans could be involved in the Trey Lance discussion. The Texans could be involved in the Trey Lance discussion. The Titans are going to take a quarterback, I believe, at 11 if they haven't already decided to make a move elsewhere, if they haven't traded up to 3, if they haven't decided on trying to go get Trey Lance, they could go and take a quarterback at 11. The Texans could take a quarterback at 2, CJ Stroud. They could not take a quarterback. They could trade out of 2, right? If they decide they don't want CJ Stroud, all hell breaks loose because now everybody's scrambling trying to get up to 2. And if they decide, nah, we good, we're not going to trade the 2nd pick, we're going to take one of these edge rushers at 2 because that's the guy that's highest on our board, or we're going to take Jalen Carter because that's the guy that's highest on our board. Guess what? Now everybody's scrambling, picking up the phone, calling Arizona. Hey. What is it going to take? Because they know Indy's taking them at 4. Indy should be on that phone. Indy should be the first one hitting Arizona's line. Like, hey, hold on. Hey, hold on. Hey, stop playing. Stop tripping. For real. Don't pick up no more phone calls. Let's do business. You don't want to move back that far, right? You need a blue chip player. You need as many talented football players as you can get. Talk to me. Arizona's like, I mean, you're right, but I could also use more picks. I'm not going to get that many from you, but if I move back a little bit further, I'm going to pick up a bunch of picks. So what you saying? It could get really interesting, but all of this because of the AFC South. Texans could move back. Texans can make a pick. Texans could let CJ Stroud fall, which would then precipitate teams coming up to number 3 to get in front of Indy. Indy could get up to number 3. Indy could trade back with Baltimore and trade for Lamar Jackson. All of this centered around 3 teams in the same division: Houston, Indy, and Tennessee, all who need a quarterback. It's fascinating to me. I think they hold the key to 1st round anarchy. If we want this thing to go off without a hitch, the Carolina Panthers selects Bryce Young, Texans select CJ Stroud, and everybody goes about their business. Things might get a little interesting at 3 because I feel like if it goes off without a hitch, 1-2, Young, Stroud, then I think the next quarterback that is coming off the board is Anthony Richardson. And I think he would be a perfect fit in the offense that we just saw the Eagles run in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. He'd be a great fit in that offense in Indianapolis, which Shane Steichen is going to attempt to replicate. So, I mean, Will Levis could probably do it too, but I don't think I think the upside with Anthony Richardson is too tantalizing to turn down. I just feel like if you're going to go that route, why not go with the guy that has the highest ceiling? So I would assume that's what teams would be trying to trade up for if they were looking to get in front of Indy. Indy could be like, it's cool either way. Will Levis is a good athlete too. We don't mind him running this offense either. But at the end of the day, things calm down considerably if Houston just takes CJ Stroud at 2. If they don't, if they trade out of 2, it gets crazy, right? Now you're going to have all this movement. If they just make a selection at 2 and it's not a quarterback, things get really helter-skelter at 3. And that would include the Indianapolis Colts at 4, potentially. Don't forget that the Tennessee Titans, no matter what happens, they're interested in 3 regardless. Whether CJ Stroud's on the board or not, they're interested at the number 3 overall pick. They may be more interested if CJ Stroud is there, which everybody else would be more interested. The Raiders are more interested. The Falcons are more interested. The Titans are more interested. The Colts are more interested. Everybody's more interested. Seattle is more interested, potentially, at number 3 if CJ Stroud is on the board. Hell, maybe even some other teams that we're not even talking about may be interested all of a sudden. Again, all of this centers around the AFC South, the most boring division in all of football. You want to know why the NFL always starts off the postseason with the winner of the AFC South hosting the first game? You never found that a coincidence, right? You understand they do that on purpose every single year. Doesn't matter who wins the division, whomever is playing in that game will host the first game of the playoffs, right? Think it might have been different this year just because of the star power with the two young quarterbacks, Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. So I think they took that game and moved it to the nightcap. If I'm not mistaken, that ended up being the 8:00 game that night or whatever, 8:30 or whatever that game was on that first night, that Saturday night. The only reason they did that is because of Trevor Lawrence and Herbert. If the Jags were playing the Vegas Raiders, they would have had that game on at 4:30. That's always the game. Even when Andrew Luck was the quarterback, it was always the first game. So it's not a great division. It's not aesthetically pleasing. If you're not a fan of one of those teams, no one really gets excited for those games. But this division could be the key to this draft being pure, unadulterated chaos, with the amount of movement that could take place just solely based off of these three teams in this division who all need quarterbacks and may go to great lengths to try and make that happen. I don't know. I could have said all of that, and the Texans just take CJ Stroud, and the Colts just wait for whomever sits there at 4. They don't do a damn thing because that's the Indy way, right? Not going to be aggressive, not going to really go after anybody. Just going to wait and see what falls into our lap. That seems to be the Indianapolis Colts way. Hasn't won them anything to this point. They've been really fortunate. They've usually sucked bad enough to where they didn't have to make an important decision other than, do I take Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning? They made the right decision then. There wasn't a decision to make between Robert Griffin III and Andrew Luck. Everybody said, take Andrew Luck. He's the best prospect since ... And it worked out for them. Since then, they're clueless. They have no idea what to do. They got to make tough decisions. They don't know when they should do this or what they should do here or how they should do that. They're just kind of running in circles on the hamster wheel. They may continue to do that and just wait and see who falls into their lap at 4, whether it's Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. They may just take that guy. They may say, nah, don't love whomever's left. And now you're looking and saying, bro, you do know that you just have Gardner Minshew on your roster at quarterback, right? We're clear on this. You do understand that that's not okay. And maybe they're saying, yeah, we understand. Next year that Caleb Williams and Drake May and all those guys will be available. We understand. Okay, if that's your approach. The interesting thing is, I kind of feel like this is a make or break year for Chris Ballard, the GM in Indy. Like, I don't think that their owner, Jim Irsay, is the kind of guy that's like, hey, losing is okay this year if we're going to get one of the young boys coming out next year. He doesn't strike me as that type of owner. He strikes me as a guy that wants to win now. And Chris Ballard seems to be moving on his own time. But Irsay is also one of those guys that's extremely involved. So it's not like Chris Ballard is pulling the strings here. Everything he does, he has to get the blessing of Jim Irsay. And so if they're going to just sit back and kind of let things play out, he's doing that with the blessing of owner Jim Irsay. Now, if the shit doesn't work, somebody's got to take the blame. Irsay's not going to take the blame. That's not what owners do. They don't take the blame. This is why I put you in charge. Somebody's got to be the fall guy. So I don't know. We'll see. At the end of the day, I think the AFC South holds the key to this draft being one of the more memorable ones in recent memory if we get the type of movement that could potentially happen whether it's a Lamar Jackson trade, and I think that would involve the Indianapolis Colts, whether the Texans trade out of 2, allow someone to come up and get a quarterback. And generally speaking, you'd like to have that in place before draft night. If you're the Texans, you want to know what you're working with, but the Texans can't get out of 2 because they don't know what the Panthers are going to do. The Panthers have come out and said, hey, I don't know where y'all getting this information from, but we haven't made a decision on the number 1 pick. I'm like, Carolina, why are you doing this? Who you fooling? Like, you don't have to be, there's no deception necessary for this. If you haven't made a decision, you haven't made a decision. But don't you find it odd? Just hear me out. Don't you find it odd that when all that stuff was coming out about the Panthers, taking Bryce Young and the Vegas odds moving even further out in front as the favorite to be the number 1 overall pick for Bryce Young, don't you find it odd that at the same time as all of this is going on, Bryce Young cancels the rest of his official 30 visits before the draft? Don't you find that a bit odd? As if he's been promised. You only see that in the NBA, right? Where a prospect gets a promise from a team where they say, hey, if you don't take any more visits, I promise you, if you're on the board at 8, we're going to take you. Stop doing workouts for teams. Don't do any more workouts, and we're going to take you. You get that in the NBA all the time, where a prospect will stop working out for teams because he's gotten a promise from a team already that if you're on the board at the time of our selection, we taking you. Don't work out for any more teams. You don't see that in the NFL. Guys don't stop taking visits because you don't know what's going to happen. Unless the Panthers already told you, bro, if you want, you can stop with the rest of these visits. We taking you at number 1. If I'm Bryce Young and I haven't been told that, I'm taking every single visit I can take just in case. The man's been told already he's going number 1. Texans know it. That's why they shopping the pick. But just in case I don't make it home tonight, you got to make sure that you don't trade out of 2 and then the Panthers pull some funny business, and now you sitting there with egg on your face because you could have had the guy you wanted all along in Bryce Young. The Texans could have avoided all of this if they just would have lost in week 18. Oh, what a wonderful world the NFL is. Lovie Smith with the greatest FU on the way out, man. Shout out to Lovie Smith for screwing the Texans royally on the way out. And he's still being paid. Gotta love it, man. Gotta love when a plan comes together. I'm giving Lovie credit for something. Lovie was just trying to save his job, trying to show management that, hey, they still playing hard for me. Give me another year. I'll show you. Give me a chance to get a quarterback in here, and I'll show you. And they was like, nah, Lovie, man. You did your time, man. You did your time. You served the purpose already. We're going to go ahead and move on from you. But Lovie gave them the ultimate bird, flipped them the ultimate bird on the way out. Anyway, I digress. So let's transition to our next segment of the show. Social media maneuvers. Y'all know what it is. I'm a midday marauder. And in case y'all don't know how this works, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent and time permits, we'll read it on the air. However, if you want to jump to the front of the line, ensure that your comment is read, use the super chat function. Okay? So, with that said, let's go to the comment section, see if there's anything in here to get to. Let's see. I don't see any comments. So we may be able to just, I got a couple of things I do want to talk about real quick. So, yeah, I don't see any comments. So, Buda Baker requested a trade on, I want to say it was last week, Friday, Saturday, might have even been Sunday. Could have been Monday. I think it was last week sometime, though. Either way, the Arizona Cardinals are a dumpster fire right now. I've already laid this out. They're a dumpster fire right now, and um, there. It's hard for me to see any way that they're not the worst team in football next year. Like, how are they not the worst team in football? It's been a mass exodus this offseason. They're going to trade DeAndre Hopkins, more likely than not at some point. Probably draft night. I've already said this. A lot of trades happen on draft night because I'm not looking to give you what you think you're going to get for this guy. And then when you realize you're not going to get what you ultimately want, now you're saying, all right, I got to move this dude. So, okay, what you willing to give me? You want a 1 for DeAndre. They're like, nah, bro, I got a 3 for you. And then you realize you're not getting a 1. And, they said, hey, I got this 3 though. And then somebody says, I got this late 2 for your ass. And they're like, deal. So DeAndre Hopkins is going to be traded. JJ Watt retired. Buda Baker wants out. You lost your best defensive lineman in free agency in Zach Allen, who I think is a budding star. And oh, by the way, your quarterback, Kyler Murray, is out with a torn ACL and going to miss the first half of the season, bare minimum. AJ Green just retired. Good luck in Arizona. You're going to need it. Now, what are some, plausible destinations for Buda Baker? I don't know. Versatile player like himself. I feel like there are plenty of places where he would fit in. Normally, guys like that would love nothing more than to stay in the division because nobody is going to value Buda Baker more than the Seattle Seahawks or the Los Angeles Rams or the San Francisco 49ers, right? Nobody's going to value him more because they see him twice a year and they understand what he brings to the table. Now, he doesn't control where he goes. And if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I'm not looking to move him in the division. But for the right price, he's a safety. He's a hybrid safety. He's not a quarterback. I'm not really that hell-bent on keeping him out of the division if I get the right price, right? So we'll see what happens. But there are a lot of teams in the league that could use a Buda Baker, that's for sure. And if it becomes a depressed market, similar to last year with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, when CJ Chauncey Gardner-Johnson became available, it was amazing what the Eagles were able to trade to get him. Never thought they'd get him for a cold, hot ham and cheese sandwich. You know how when you get a bag of chips from your local convenience store, you pop that puppy open, and the first 2/3 of the bag is air. It was like a fourth of chips in the bag that the Eagles gave the Saints. And they didn't know it at the time, but there was a slight corner of that bag that had a hole in it. So there was air getting inside. And that 1/4 of a bag of chips was stale. And the Eagles laughed at them. When they opened the bag, they took a bite of that first chip, and it was no crunch, no pop to that thing. The Eagles just smiled and laughed and walked away with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Stole from them boys. I feel like somebody's about to do that to Arizona. We'll see. Arizona, I got to give them an opportunity to prove me wrong. They got a new general manager. They got a whole reboot going on in Arizona right now. I feel like the general manager got off to a terrible start by hiring Jonathan Gannon. So I already don't trust this man as is, okay? Whomever he is. I don't even know who their new GM is. I don't even care. You hired Jonathan Gannon. He could be a better head coach than he was a defensive coordinator. We'll see. I'll wait and I'll wait to pass judgment on that hire. I'll just say you're not off to a great start in my book with that hire. But that said, maybe this new GM is shrewd and he's about to move all of these players that aren't going to help them win anything anyway, pick up a bunch of assets and fast track this thing, and Kyler Murray gets healthy, and next year they're ready to win some games. And they end up with the number 1 or 2 pick in the draft next year. They don't need a quarterback. Everybody's scrambling, trying to get up to get one of these QBs. And they say, hey, y'all hit my line. Y'all know what it is. We had this same discussion with y'all last year when I was at number 3. Hit my line. Y'all know the number. Maybe they're in a position to do that 2 years in a row, because they're going to stink, are the Arizona Cardinals. If they're not one of the worst teams in football next year, I will be as surprised as I've been in a long time. Last year, I was surprised on a number of fronts. I was shocked that the Seattle Seahawks were as good as they were. I was shocked that the New York Giants weren't an ass fest. And I was shocked that the Green Bay Packers weren't very good, even though I thought they would take a step back. I didn't think they would regress to the point where they wouldn't make the playoffs. I'll be more shocked in all 3 of those items from last year if the Arizona Cardinals aren't a top 5 pick next year. I'm thinking more like top 3, personally. But we'll see. Anyway, I digress. Redneck Rocker 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, what's your scouting report on Van Ness? Commander? Nah, I don't see him as a commander. So quick synopsis of Lucas Van Ness. He's interesting. So I've talked about this, and next week we're going to talk about a lot of these prospects. Obviously, when we're at our draft party and these guys get selected, I'm going to talk about them at greater detail. But even heading into the draft next week, we're going to have a crash course on a lot of these positions, as many of them as we can get to. And I'll pick out, a select few of the prospects from each position and kind of give you a quick synopsis on what I've seen from them and what I think they, project at the next level. I've got a comp. So I'm going to put all of these players into the LouieTeeNetwork comp system and spit out a comp for them. I've got a comp for every one of these guys that we'll talk about. But Lucas Van Ness is very interesting because he didn't even start at Iowa. He didn't start last year. He didn't start this year. You turn on the tape and you're watching the first 2 series and he's not even in the game, So you're going through that and you're like, well, shit, where is he at? Because he's not a starter. He was a rotational guy. So it just goes to show you how much talent people feel like this kid has, where he didn't even start at Iowa at all. Okay. Didn't post big numbers. And I've already laid this out for you. The only edge rusher in this year's draft class that posted gaudy collegiate statistics that you say, hey, look at this production, all right, is Will Anderson. The rest of these dudes you're projecting, okay? You're projecting with Nolan Smith. The most sacks Nolan Smith had in the season, I think, was 4. I think the most sacks Lucas Van Ness had in the season, I think might have been 4.5, 3.5, 4.5 sacks. Like, you're projecting with these dudes. So with Lucas Van Ness, the interesting thing with him, he's a pure power rusher. He's explosive, though. But because he played in an Iowa defense that really didn't allow for him to showcase his explosiveness and his dynamic ability, you saw flashes, but this guy was playing the 4-eye, the 2-eye. He's playing all these different techniques, right? Like, how are you supposed to see how explosive a dude is from 2-eye, right? It's hard. You can see it, and there were plays where he just straight up beat the guard, straight up beat the center. One move, explosive to the quarterback. But you don't see it consistently. It's not as easy as watching a guy come off the edge and beat a tackle, right? So because he's playing inside so much, he's being reduced to inside. The furthest outside you're going to see Lucas Van Ness is a 5-tech. And that's rare. It's usually a 4-eye, 2, or 2-eye. That's what he's playing. And so it's hard, man. It's hard to project that if you're not looking for something specific. I can tell you this. When I watch him, I see traits of guys that have had success in the league. And I think it's all about fit for Lucas Van Ness. And you've got to have a plan for him. He's still raw, hasn't played a ton of football at a high level as a starter. So while he's getting snaps, he's not developed like some of these other dudes who have been playing for 2-3 years as a starter and playing starter snaps. He just hasn't seen enough. That said, he's a talent, man. Explosive. He's a great athlete. You saw that at the combine. You watch him on tape, you see that he's explosive and he's a good athlete. He's strong as an ox. So now it's about fit. What are you looking to do? What do you want him to be? The dude is 200, almost 280 pounds. So what do you want him to do? You looking for a base, 3-4 base end, which is a 5 tech? Then he's going to need to gain a little bit more weight. I think he can gain a little bit more weight. He's still filling out his frame. You want him to be a defensive tackle, undersized defensive tackle in a 4-3, in an even front. Still got to gain some more weight for that. You want him to be a base 4-3 defensive end, which I think most teams are looking at him as. He's already ready for that. You just got to teach him how to be that, because he wasn't that at Iowa. He didn't play base 4-3 defensive end. He played in an odd front, not an even front. And he was always reduced inside. So you got to teach him how to be a real defensive end, how to use his hands, how to set tackles up. He didn't do that. No, he's not a commander, but I think he'll end up being a first-round pick for somebody. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Video channel writes, Lou, what's good? What's going on, video channel? Writes, just tuned in. Did you hear the Brian Davis interview with the Junkies? Nah, I heard about the interview. I got, look, man, I got nothing to give to that situation. You guys know how I feel about it. That man isn't getting the franchise. I already gave you a video outlining that. That man is not getting the team. What's going on right now is a clown show. It's a circus. And the more attention you give the circus, the more tickets they sell. Right? I'm not here to help him sell tickets. If he's making money, cool. I don't believe you. You need more people. You definitely ain't getting this franchise. The NFL, they not signing off on the foolishness that he's got going on. Understand that they run a airtight business. They're not just letting anybody in their fraternity. You're not going to F their shit up and make them look like a damn fool. Okay? It's enough of that going on already. So what they not going to do is invite a dude that already had skeletons that everybody can see before he gets into the league and let him come in here and embarrass them. Ain't no way. So whatever he had to say, that's cool. There's an audience for that. I don't listen to the radio. Y'all know that already. So I'm not going to go out my way to listen to this particular interview, because I already know that man ain't talking about nothing that pertains to me and my interests. My interest is who's buying this team, how fast can you get it done, and how fast can we turn the page and start trying to win some football games. He ain't a part of that equation for me. So I got no energy to give to Brian Davis. So whatever he's talking about, hey, that's cool, man. But just know this. I remember when we were getting into the real meat and potato of this process, and we heard about Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, and that he was becoming interested in the Commanders, and that required an NDA to be signed if you were putting in a bid. Meaning, if somebody's actually trying to buy a team, it ain't going to be a lot of this going on, a lot of jibber jabber, a lot of flapping of the gums. Shut up, okay? If you're trying to buy this team, keep your mouth closed and let's do business, right? This man is going on a media tour, a world tour on media, trying to defend a bid that doesn't exist. If he really was in this process, he would not be able to talk about it the way he's talking about it. So no, I didn't listen to it. But if you did, have at it, man. Knock yourself out. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy John Perez writes, Cardinals are a mess, Lou. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. If I were them, I honestly trade Murray and draft Caleb or Drake May next year. They're going to suck anyway. If they get to that point, I would consider it, because I don't think they feel like Kyler Murray. I don't. If you've been there, then he's probably done some things that have turned you off already. If you're just getting there and you hear the stories about him, you probably need to get to know him first before you formulate an opinion on the kid. But at the end of the day, there's an opinion about Kyler Murray that's circling around the league. The fact that there had to be a provision put into his deal that forced him to study tells you all you need to know about where this kid's mental was or is. And I told you there was a problem with Kyler Murray when, before he got drafted, he did that Dan Patrick interview and his dad was off to the side of the set, and it was really awkward and weird. And he was doing the whole threaten to play baseball thing. I said, something's off with this dude. And then as I got to see him and we saw some of the immaturity from him during games where he's showing up his receivers after he makes a mistake, I said, he doesn't want contact, which he's a small dude. I get that. But he doesn't want contact, and he's not a great teammate, and you need your quarterback. Even if it's lead by example, you're not a rah-rah vocal guy. He's not even a lead by example guy. That's been shown by the contract that they signed him to with the provision in that said, hey, we need you to study. So he's not a lead by example guy. He's showing up teammates on the field. He's getting into spats with coaches during timeouts. We saw all of this with him. His former teammate, Patrick Peterson, says he's selfish. And look, Patrick Peterson won't shit for that. Pat Pete was out of pocket and then had the audacity to hit this man up off to the side and try to say, hey, man, no hard feelings. Kiss my ass. If you really cared about me, and Murray said this, if you really cared about me, you would have hit me up, in the text message. You would have called me and we could have chopped it up. And you could have let me know how you felt. You didn't have to air me out like that on a podcast. So don't try to come over here and be buddy now. But just because, and I've always said Pat Pete he's a backstabber. He's one of them dudes that smiling in your face all the time. He want to take your place. Them backstabbers. He's a backstabber, but that don't mean he's lying or he's wrong. That just means he ain't shit for that. So if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I'd be looking to move on. If I ended up at 1 or 2 next year and I truly believed in one of those quarterbacks, and as much as I don't like Caleb Williams, and I try not to like him as a football player, man, he's good. Damn, he's good. All right. There's no way you're going to look at Caleb Williams and say he's not better than Kyler Murray. Sorry, not sorry. And so there will be a decision that has to be made next year, but you cross that bridge when you get there. The Cardinals could end up with the 5th pick and not even in a position to have to make a decision like that. So it only comes up if you're like the Bears from this past year, where you've got a quarterback that you just drafted. In the case of the Cardinals, that you not only drafted, 4 or 5 years ago, but you've already extended and gave it a new deal to and new money to. And now you're holding the number 1 or 2 overall pick, where the Bears they were holding the number 1 overall pick, and they already had Justin Fields. So that'll be a real interesting conversation for next year if that arises, but we don't know if that's going to happen or not. Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Kyle writes, Washington should trade up for Witherspoon, get the best cornerback. That's not their style to trade up. And again, You trade up to me, for one of two things in a draft. You either trade up for a quarterback, because that, to me, supersedes everything. It doesn't matter all the other shit you've done, all the things you haven't done, you're going to always need a quarterback. So if you're trading up for a quarterback, that always makes sense. Whether you got one now and you're trading for one in the future, or you don't have one and you're going to get your guy, whatever the case may be, trading up for a quarterback always makes sense. Always. And the only other way you trade up is if you feel like you're a piece away, and this guy could be the missing piece. The Atlanta Falcons traded up for Julio. Why? Because they thought he was the missing piece, and he almost was. They had Roddy White already. They had Matt Ryan already, had Michael Burner the Turner. They felt like their offense was right there on the cusp of taking over and turning that corner. They just needed that explosive, dynamic athlete opposite Roddy White. Julio Jones was it. And then eventually Matt Ryan was league MVP, and they went to the Super Bowl and all of that good stuff. He was the missing piece. They just didn't complete the cipher. That's when you trade up for a player. Washington is not one player away. So you can't be in the process. You can't be in the thought process of trading away assets to get one asset at the expense of 3 or 4 more, when you're 5 or 6 more assets away from even being in the discussion. That's not smart business. So while Witherspoon, and again, that's subjective, he doesn't technically fit what they look for in a corner, but his style of play fits any defense. But they like the long, active, physical, gritty corners. He's not that. He's gritty, he's physical, he's dynamic, but he's not tall. He doesn't have long arms and wingspan and all of those things. So that doesn't necessarily fit what they're looking for at the cornerback position. But anyway, I digress. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, we need to protect how, not a cornerback or a linebacker. They're going to draft offensive linemen. When and where and how many, don't know. Can't tell you that. I've said all along, 2 offensive linemen at a bare minimum will be selected in this draft class. I've made it abundantly clear that I think a center is definitely being selected. That's the one position I can assure. And I feel like they're going to take a guard. So if I had to guess, I keep saying center and guard. But you can take a guy that has experience playing both of those positions and say, hey, we got a center and a guard. He can play both, which, Ron loves to do. And then take a tackle and a guard. And that guard can also play center. And boom, you got your tackle and you got a guard that can also play center. So you got all 3 of them knocked out with 2 picks and you're done with it. So they're going to take offensive line. Again, the question isn't if they're going to take offensive linemen. It's when do they take them? How many do they take? And what positions do those offensive linemen play? JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, John Perez, writes, I think you and I can agree that Ballard's job is on the line in Indy, so they have to get it right at QB, with Irsay being so unpredictable as an owner. Couldn't agree with you more, JP. Irsay is definitely unpredictable as an NFL owner, has been, actually been really patient with Chris Ballard. I think he understood that Andrew Luck situation, nobody saw it coming, caught him off guard. They kind of did the best that they could initially with the situation being what it was by getting Phillip Rivers. He took them to the playoffs that first year. They wanted him back. Phillip Rivers was like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and coach high school ball because I know I'm not going to win a Super Bowl here. But he remember the next year after Phillip Rivers retired, he said, hey, if anybody out there needs a quarterback. Remember when Drew Brees got hurt that next year, when Phillip Rivers had just retired, and the Saints needed a quarterback? They had Teddy Bridgewater, and everybody was like, "Yo, Teddy Bridgewater is actually filling in well," but Phillip Rivers was like, "Yo, y'all look like y'all can win a chip. Hit me up." You know what I'm saying? I'm in shape. I'm ready to go. But then after that, they went out and got Carson Wentz. That didn't work for them. And then, last year was an absolute abject disaster with Matt Ryan. And so now here we are. I think he's given him enough grace, enough opportunities to find a guy to be the long-term solution. It hasn't worked. And now I think Irsay's like, all right, man, get me a guy. We may not win next year, but if you've got a guy that we believe in and we think we can win big with moving forward, you're safe. But if we find ourselves in a similar predicament next year, you gone, and I'm going to let the next GM come in here and pick the quarterback. I'm sick of fooling around with you. I could see that being the case too. But Ballard isn't operating. He's not moving like a dude whose seat is getting warm, possibly hot already. He seems to be sitting real comfortable right now. I don't understand it. But I don't know. Maybe he knows something that we don't. So anyway, I digress. All right, let's transition to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So I was thinking about a couple of things to end the show. One of them just slipped my mind. Draymond Green getting suspended. I wanted to talk about that earlier, and I was like, I'll just save it for the end of the show. And DeAndre Hopkins pretty much saying, hey, I'd like to play for the Buffalo Bills. We'll knock those out one at a time, and then we'll get out of here. So Draymond Green getting suspended. I talked about this on IG Live the other night after the game. That was ridiculous. And I said this already. I'm not a fan of the Warriors, but I love the way they play basketball. I love Steph Curry as a player and a dude. He's a good dude. Like, I love Steph Curry. It's the rest of those dudes he plays with that absolutely irk me to no end. Can't stand Klay Thompson. Can't stand Draymond Green. Can't stand Jordan Poole. That said, they're all good basketball players and they all serve a purpose. But Draymond Green, to me, of that group, is the most indispensable because of all of the different hats that he wears. Now, they're not winning a championship without Steph Curry, obviously. Probably aren't winning one without Klay Thompson, although of all the pieces that they have, he's the most replaceable, but he's still one of the greatest shooters we've seen in NBA history. It's hard to replace that. They're not the Splash Brothers without Klay Thompson. That said, Draymond, to me, is, after Steph, the most indispensable player because he does so many things for them. He rebounds the basketball. He initiates the offense. At times, he's the point guard. He's bringing the ball up the court. He's initiating offense. They run their offense through Draymond Green at the high post. He's got the basketball. He's making the decisions. He's making the bounce pass on that back cut. He's setting the pick as they run around 50 pin downs and screens. He's setting all of that stuff up. He's making the decisions. And he does the dirty work. He rebounds. He's the tough guy. He's setting the physical screens. He's the one doing all of the agitating. He is, to me, the cog that makes that engine run smoothly. Without him, they're not them. And I said this already. LeBron doesn't win a championship in Cleveland if Draymond doesn't get suspended for Game 6. And they may not win this series now, down 0-2 going home, because he's suspended for Game 3. And I said this directly after the game. He stays hurting his team. He's selfish. And you saw his answer after the game. Yeah, he held my leg 2 games in a row, and they sat there and watched him hold my leg. So holding your leg, the response to that is to step on this man, stomp on this man's chest and then use all of your body weight to step on his body to propel yourself down the court. That's the way you respond to somebody grabbing your leg. That's not an eye for an eye, bro. You took it beyond the Call of Duty there, okay? Above and beyond. You went way, when you hear eye for an eye, you smack me in my face, I smack you in yours, or I punch you in yours, okay? You put your hands on my face first. The man grabbed your leg, okay? There are a million things you could have done to get free of him grabbing your leg. Really, all you should have been looking to do was show the officials that this man is grabbing my leg. You could have been demonstrative. You could have shook your leg. Oh, he's holding me. They would have called a technical foul like they did on him. I think they called a technical and a flagrant one on him. You could have got your point across without stepping on the man and jumping off of his chest. He deserved to be ejected, then had the audacity to turn into a WWE heel, egging the crowd on, getting into a spat with a fan one-on-one, and then after the game trying to defend himself. You got to be outside your damn mind. Draymond Green is delusional. I'm glad the league suspended him for a game. I didn't think they were going to do it, and if they didn't do it, I wasn't going to trip about it. But I'm glad that they did. And Joe Dumars came out, who is the equivalent of Brian Dawkins in the NFL. Pretty much said, look, it was the way that he conducted himself. It was his response to what was done to him. That wasn't something where, again, if somebody pushes you hard in your back and your neck snaps back and your first reaction is to turn around and punch them, we get it. I don't know who pushed me. I just turn around and I'm swinging. I get it. Right? The man was holding your leg. It was harmless. It was unnecessary. Okay? But it was harmless. Like, you're not going to hurt yourself. You could have injured this man. Like, they had to give him x-rays. And I thought this is how, and the Kings were really smart in how they played this. Because I felt like if you wanted Draymond to be suspended, you needed to really play this thing up. He needed an x-ray. He needed to have a bruised sternum. He needed to be questionable for, the next game. If they don't do all of those things and they just say, because after the game, Domantas Sabonis was downplaying it. It's playoff basketball, yada, yada, yada. Like, nothing was wrong. Nah. That's not how we going to do this. You're getting x-rays. You got a bruised sternum and a bruised lung. Like, we going to play this up. My thought process was, if he can't play, if Sabonis can't go or is compromised in any way, shape, or form due to that in game 3, then Draymond was going to get suspended. Sabonis is going to play in game 3, so I thought Draymond was going to get to play. And the initial report was he wasn't going to be suspended, but heavily fined. But Joe Dumars came out and said, nah, that was ridiculous. That was uncalled for, unnecessary, and he's a repeat offender. We're not letting that shit slide. Go sit your ass down for a game. And that ultimately, we'll see if the champs can respond at home without what I think is their second most indispensable piece on their team, and Draymond Green. He may have just cost his team an opportunity at repeating this year. I love it too. I'm not going to lie to you. I love it. Love that the Kings took care of business at home in the first 2. And I love that he couldn't control himself. Love it. Anyway, I digress. DeAndre Hopkins pretty much said he wants to go to the Buffalo Bills. Our guy, our resident Bills fan here on the channel, JL Smooth, was talking about all of the things that DeAndre Hopkins was doing to drop subtle hints that he wanted to be a Buffalo Bill, including a post on socials with him driving in his car, listening to Buffalo Soldier. He thought that this thing would have gotten done already. I said, I don't think it's getting done, JL Smooth. I said, if it does, it will be Draft night. Not before, not after. So I think he's going to be traded. A lot of times when guys want to be traded and they tell you where they want to go, they usually don't end up there. It's rare that a guy says, hey, I want to go here, and that team says, we'll make it happen. Unless you're a quarterback, and we have this great relationship and we want to do right by you, i.e. Matthew Stafford being traded from the Detroit Lions. He did not have a no trade clause. They could have sent him to Washington. They could have sent him to Carolina. These were all teams interested. They could have made the back end of Matthew Stafford's career hell. Now, maybe not Washington would have been hell for him. Maybe it would have been. Carolina definitely would have been hell for him. Who knows? They said, nah, we ain't going to do you like that, Matthew. Where you want to go? He said, well, I don't want to go to New England. I don't want to go to Washington. I don't want to go to Carolina. So LA sounds real good to me. I got family out there. It's warmer. And I think I can win a Super Bowl there. Trade me to LA. That'd be great. And they did. They wanted to do right by Matthew Stafford. It's rare, though, that happens. Anyway, I digress. We'll see what happens with his situation. I think because that is in play, a lot of people are mocking the Bills to take a receiver. They have a window now. And when you have a window that is open now, but can slam shut in any, year or two from now, you're going to do whatever you can to win now. The Bills have a window that is open now, but it's not going to be open for much longer because Gabe Davis will have to be paid or you'll have to move on from him. So in order to put yourself in a position to maximize guys that are on rookie contracts, still, you need to win now. So a guy like DeAndre Hopkins makes a ton of sense from that standpoint if you've got the cap space. So we'll see if they can negotiate a deal where Arizona eats a little bit of his deal and they can eat the rest of it and they can take on his salary and see if he can't help the Bills bring a chip back to upstate New York. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 329th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. If you guys are interested, I will be live tonight after the Grizzlies game. Win or lose, there will not be a draw. Win or lose, down 0-2 going back to LA or 1-1 going back to LA, whatever it is, I'll be live tonight after the game on IG talking about that. And I'll be back with a fresh episode of the pod on Friday, I believe. That is the goal. The mock draft will be out on Saturday. If you're a Washington Commanders fan, we will be live tomorrow night for the Command Post Live, where we will probably spend 99.9% of the show talking 2023 NFL draft. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening. God bless and good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.